What's up, everybody? It's your man, MG Marcus Grant. And are you looking to stay up to date with the latest goings-on of your favorite, or maybe not so favorite NFL team? Well, how do you do that? You go directly to the source. Every week, Matty Kroll is doing just that with On the Beat, talking to beat reporters from across the National Football League. Be sure to check it out each and every week on 32-Bit.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, it's your host, Calvin Domingo, a.k.a. Steezy A. Smith, on another edition of On Beat, today featuring the Tennessee Titans. And as you guys know, I have a very important guest with me today, another VIG. He's covered a plethora of teams in the past, but today, and his most recent team, he covers for ESPN, the Tennessee Titans. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Turron Davenport.
What's going on, man? Appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How you doing today?
Oh, everything is great, man. You woke up, so you won. That's the way I look at it.
At 100% of the time, all glory to be the guy. Amen. Look, before we get into the whole football thing, we do want to get to know you just a little bit, Mr. Davenport. So I want to begin with this. Like I alluded to, you've spent time covering, the Eagles, the Ravens, the 49ers. Obviously, now you cover the Titans for ESPN. You're the author / co-author of 4 books. You're a member of the Pro Football Writers Association. You've negotiated marketing and advertisement deals for various NFL players. You've been in the game for a long time, so I got to ask you, would you say you've accomplished everything you've set out to do, or are there more things that you feel like that have to be done?
No, there's always more to be done. I would like to have a little bit more of a national outreach. I also have a goal of getting on the NFL matchup show, which is why I do the whiteboard videos that I do. With ESPN, there's only so much that we could post video-wise. So in order to show my ability to explain the game, I use the whiteboard so that way I'm not taking up the amount of videos that collectively ESPN is able to share on social media, et cetera. So those are some of the things that I would like to do. I mean, I'm definitely proud of what I've been able to accomplish, but there's always more. You never settle.
And 1,000%. I mean, I think those who get complacent are those who start losing in life, right? Like, you don't ever want to stay complacent. You don't ever want to stay in the same shoes. So I can relate 100%. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you graduated from Cheney University with a degree in marketing back in 2001. Did you know at that time, upon graduating, that you was going to be a reporter and that you was going to do all this?
No, I actually had intentions of playing professional football. I kind of did the dance with a couple of Canadian League teams, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, Hamilton Tiger Cats, and then Arena League with they're now I don't even know if they're still in. I don't think they're in Las Vegas anymore. But they were at the time the New Jersey Gladiators as well as the New York Dragons. I had workouts and different things to, join their team, but it just never came to fruition. So no, to answer your question, I didn't envision myself being a writer. I a reporter. I wanted to, be the ones that they were writing about.
Hey, facts. And I can't blame you, but I mean, who's to say that you can't be a star at what you're doing, right? I mean, you're still a star in your own right, and you are where you are because, hey, as they like to say, things happen for a reason, right? And so I gotta ask though, before we move on to the whole football side of the conversation, out of all the teams that you cover, do you have a favorite city / team?
I mean, Philly. I mean, that's home. So that's probably going to be the easiest answer to give. Plus the fact that when I covered that team, they won a Super Bowl. That run was really fun to watch. No one expected it, including us covering the team, but they did it, and it was a really solid ride. I enjoyed that the most out of everything I've done. But 2019 here covering the Titans was a lot of fun too because they went on a similar type of run, but it just didn't end with the same success that the Eagles did as far as actually winning the Super Bowl.
Hey, maybe if they had a Nick Foles instead of Ryan Tannehill, things would have ended differently, right? But
yeah, quite possibly.
Quite possibly. But hey, Ryan Tannehill, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's been doing his Dougie over there in Tennessee, but I don't want to start with him as now we're going to transition into the football sort of thing. I know this has been talked about ad nauseum. I know you've been bombarded and whatnot, but we got to get it out the way. How far are A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans in contract negotiations?
Well, it's something that they've been working on since the Combine. So the conversation has been there. The Titans made it clear that they wanted to get through free agency and the draft before they addressed it. obviously with A.J. Brown and his, not reporting to voluntary portion of OTAs and some of his comments on Twitter kind of redirect the conversation to him wanting a deal now. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it will happen eventually. They've made it clear that they want to keep him. They're just not on the same page, and that's something you have to look at because of the contracts, right? Devontae Adams, the $141 million. You look at Tyreek Hill, what he's done, Stephon Diggs and his contract. Then you go to DJ Moore, who's averaging about $20 million a year. I think A.J. Brown will fall right in line, like right in between those. DJ Moore is a really good player, so he deserves what he's getting. A.J. is still ascending to that level, but I think that he is definitely someone that should get right along those lines.
So do you think that Tennessee, they're not any way reluctant to paying that much money just because we all know that their offense runs through a Derrick Henry? And if I'm not mistaken, I think Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown, they both have the same agent.
Correct.
And so with Deebo, I know he has a little bit more leverage in his negotiations just because he played more, I guess, wide back, right? A.J. Brown hasn't eclipsed 1,100 yards. Do you think the Tennessee Titans are 100% committed to paying him $20+ million a year, though, knowing that he's not the focal point of their offense?
He actually is the focal point of their passing game. And I think when you look at how this team is structured, look, Derrick Henry's outstanding, and he is a different creature. I joke with him. I call him a Martian. And
literally,
that being said, 2-3 years, that's probably what's left. A.J. Brown last year when Henry was out, he played 13 games. They were 11-2 in those games. You watch the 49ers game, he single-handedly won that game for them. And you look at what he's accounted for in the passing game, he basically is their passing game. So he does have an important role. I would say just as important as Derrick Henry, because when they play action and they throw that arrow route, the dagger route, the glance route, or whichever way you want to call it, they throw it to him. He's across the middle. He catches it, and he takes it the distance. And that's another one of their ways of scoring points.
So I think if I gather that correctly, are you trying to say that he's untouchable in trade talks?
I don't think that they would trade him. It would probably take a heck of an offer. They're apparently not even listening to offers, whatever that would mean. They're not picking up the phone on calls with A.J. Brown. But if the Jets come with, the 10th overall pick and package it with a couple of their second, I would imagine that the Titans would take that. But I just don't see a team offering that. So I'll say he's untouchable to an extent, but there's always offers out there that could, make it happen.
Godfather offers are a thing, right? And so to your point, I know this isn't directly related. And just for reference, I am over here from Seattle and, I rock with the Seahawks, right? I cover the Seahawks and whatnot. So this is a little off topic, right? But Russell Wilson, right? He was traded eventually. But before that, at the Combine, Pete Carroll and Sean Snyder, they were like, we have no intentions of trading Russell Wilson. And in your last article, which I did read, you mentioned how general manager John Robinson, he talked about how, let me see, I wrote the quote down. He does not foresee that happening as it pertains to a trade involving an A.J. Brown. Can we take him more for his word, or is this more just coach speak or general manager speak?
I think that I cannot foresee that happening. Left the window open because I can't see it happening. But that he didn't say, like, when the Cardinals talked about Kyler Murray, they said 0%, zero chance. He said, I don't foresee that happening. So, I think he left some wiggle room. And again, the Godfather offer could come and it's like, hey, man, love you, but see ya.
Hey, man, that's the nature of the business. That's tough. But then again, I guess when we're looking at it from a business standpoint, if that hypothetical were to happen, right, the Titans could choose from a Jameson Williams. They could choose from a Chris Olave, a Garrett Wilson. There's a plethora, Drake London. There's a plethora of options. So I guess if it gets to that point, the Titans, they're in good hands. But I wanted to talk about the rest of the teams in the AFC, right? So we're looking at the Bengals. They were in the Super Bowl last year. The Ravens, obviously Lamar Jackson was injured. They're going to be a threat. The Browns making moves. Deshaun Watson, the Bills, Super Bowl contenders. I don't need to go through all the teams in the AFC, but when I'm looking at the Titans, the most notable acquisition was Robert Woods, who's coming off a torn ACL. The Titans did trade a 6th-round pick. So this is a two-part question I wanted to ask you, Mr. Turron. How is Robert Woods going along in his update or in his recovery, excuse me, from a torn ACL? And outside of the draft, do you foresee any sort of other moves that the Titans are going to make to be able to keep up with the rest of the teams in the AFC?
Yeah, Robert Woods, from what I understand, is progressing well. He probably won't be on the field till probably that second week of camp. And even then, he's not going to be himself. So there's definitely something that they need to do receiver-wise, which is just compounded by the A.J. Brown mystery. And I could see, Treylon Burks at 26. That's a very, very reasonable option for them. And even later in the draft, if they're able to maneuver some, I could see him moving down and taking Sky Moore out of Western Michigan, who's an outstanding receiver. So there are some things, George Pickens out of Georgia. There's some things that they could do. As far as adding a guy, I don't know that they're going to do that because they're pretty much up against the cap. Now, they're going to get $9.5 million when Julio Jones, that release goes into effect for the post-June 1st. But I don't see them bringing him. Maybe a Will Fuller or somebody like that could come in and help out. But I think they're going to run with what they have.
Okay, for sure. So, no doubt. Well, we just went from talking about the draft. Now I want to talk about the state of the AFC South. So, as you know, the Colts have been making moves, right? They traded for Matt Ryan. They signed Stephon Gilmore. They traded for Yannick Ngakoue. And actually, I ran a poll on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago. I was asking people, who should the favorites be in the AFC South? Should it be the Colts? Should it be the reigning AFC South champions, the number 1 seed from last year, the Tennessee Titans? So I got to ask you. You got to decide now. Who should be the favorites in the AFC South? Should it be the reigning AFC South champs and the team that you cover in the Tennessee Titans, or is it the Indianapolis Colts?
I think it should still be the Titans. And, yes, a lot of attention is going towards the moves that the Colts have made, but the Titans are getting Derrick Henry back. And that is a pretty significant acquisition in itself. They managed to get the top seed in the AFC without Derrick Henry, so for a good amount of the year. So I think they should still be the favorites.
Okay, no doubt. Well, speaking of Derrick Henry, you alluded to this a little bit, but at pick 26 in the first round, they could go receiver, right? But are you hearing anything, or is there any sort of truth to the rumors that they could potentially take a quarterback of the future? Like, let's say Sam Howell, if Desmond Ritter's there, maybe a Matt Corral?
Well, a lot of this whole quarterback of the future conversation started because I asked John Robinson about that at the Combine. And he said that it would have to be a situation where there were some top-end guys available at the back end of the draft, because that's typically where they've been able to select because of their success during the season. This is a great year for that. You got Sam Howell, as you mentioned, Desmond Ridder. They even like Carson Strong, who would probably be a third-round guy, but there are some guys that they like. Bailey Zappi, who I don't think that he's a guy that will come in and be a franchise quarterback, but that's a guy that they've shown interest in. So, yeah, absolutely, that is on the table. But it just looks like Desmond Ridder, who is probably the best match for them, it looks like he's going to be gone, I would say, by 20 to, when the Steelers pick. Sam Howell is a very interesting one, though, because he lost literally his top 4 weapons, right? Top 2 running backs, top 2 receivers, and he came back last year and he had to try to figure it out. But, I mean, if you don't have options, then you're not going to be as good as you were when you had a bunch of them.
Facts. I mean, you talk about Sam Howell, he almost looked like he was a running back out there with the way that he was running the football, bouncing out tackles, getting all these touchdowns. I was like, is this the same Sam Howell? Well, I guess because of circumstance, he had to do his Dougie, he had to do his thing. But I want to go back to the draft just for one more question. So at 26 overall, right? Quarterbacks on the board, wide receivers on the board. Are you hearing any sort of, or do you have any sort of insight as to what position they could be focusing on? Maybe defenses in play?
I would doubt defenses in play unless, a Jermaine Johnson or one of these guys just somehow fall to them. I would say the trenches, the offensive line, Tyler Smith out of Tulsa is one to look at. Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. Zion Johnson, those are some guys. Trevor Penning, if he's somehow there, I think he would be the pick above all else, because he is a guy that they could put and have bookend Taylor Lewan, Trevor Penning, and when Lewan eventually moves on, they flip Penning to the left side.
And that'd be a slam dunk of a pick. I mean, I know he didn't play tackle, but I think the Titans also lost Roger Saffold.
Right, and that's the left guard situation. That's why Kenyon Green, Zion Johnson, those guys will be plug and play at that left side. Now, Zion Johnson gives you someone that you could bump over to center once Ben Jones moves on, which will probably be a couple years.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, we just went from talking about the draft. Now I want to talk about the state of the AFC South. So as you know, the Colts have been making moves, right? They traded for Matt Ryan. They signed Stephon Gilmore. They traded for Yannick Ngakoue. And actually, I ran a poll on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago. I was asking people, who should the favorites be in the AFC South? Should it be the Colts? Should it be the reigning AFC South champions, the #1 seed from last year, the Tennessee Titans? So I got to ask you, you got to decide now. Who should be the favorites in the AFC South? Should it be the reigning AFC South champs and the team that you cover in the Tennessee Titans, or is it the Indianapolis Colts?
I think it should still be the Titans. And, yes, a lot of attention is going towards the moves that the Colts have made, but the Titans are getting Derrick Henry back. And that is a pretty significant acquisition in itself. They managed to get the top seed in the AFC without Derrick Henry, so for a good amount of the year. So I think they should still be the favorites.
Okay, no doubt. Well, speaking of Derrick Henry,
be the favorites.
Okay, no doubt. Well, speaking of Derrick Henry, you brought up Derrick Henry and how Tennessee was successful, in his absence. They put up, competent numbers in the ground game. So with him coming back after a major injury, I know he was a little rusty in the playoffs. Do you see the Titans kind of scaling back his workload heading into next year?
I don't think they will. They're going to continue to use him, and that's something that Todd Downing has said before, that they are a team that they run the football. That's what they're predicated upon, and they from there go play action passing games. So I don't think that they'll limit his workload at all.
And I gotta ask, did they bring back who was Deontay Foreman? Because I think last time I checked the depth chart, he was.
And that surprised me because Foreman, he ended up signing with the Panthers, and it was, I think, like a $2 million deal. So it was next to nothing. I was very surprised. But they did bring back Dontrell Hilliard. Jordan Wilkins, who a former Colt, is a pretty solid player as well. They have him in the mix. You got Trenton Cannon, former 49ers running back and special teams ace. He'll be on the roster. I could see them drafting the back as well. You look at Rutgers has a guy named Isaiah Pacheco, pretty big, 5'11", 6 feet, 217 or so pounds, 4.37 guy, home run hitter. When you get a big back like that could run that fast and has some cutback ability, that fits what they want to do in that zone scheme.
Oh, 100%. I agree. I guess you kind of answered my next question because I was going to ask, is running back going to be a target in the draft? But like you just said, that most definitely is. A couple more questions before we wrap this up. Turron, I got to ask, there's a lot of people out there that play fantasy football, right? And from a fantasy football perspective, from a standpoint of that, a lot of folks are very enamored with the Nikhil Westbrook-Akine, right, who showed some promise last year. Now, you talked about it too. The Titans, they released Julio Jones. And so I guess this is a two-part question, but what do you expect out of a Nick Westbrook-Akine next year statistically? And was his presence one of the reasons why Tennessee was comfortable in moving on from Julio Jones a year after trading for him?
I don't think it would be reasonable to expect much from Westbrook-Akine because you look at A.J. Brown, Robert Woods, Austin Hooper, who they signed, he's going to at least be fourth in the pecking order. What happens if they draft Treylon Burks? Now he's fifth. So you'll get spot starts with him and some production, but I don't think it's anything that I would pick over some of these other guys. And there's a lot of receivers. I mean, you could get fantasy-wise. I mean, you could get Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. You could get those guys very late. Terry McLaurin, you could get him late. So there's a lot of options receiver-wise.
Man, okay. And just because I brought him up, I know he's not a Tennessee Titan no more, but do you see Julio Jones reuniting with Matt Ryan in Indianapolis?
It's possible, but I'll be honest with you. I don't think he has much left. It's just one of those things where the way he plays, and that's something that I noticed just in getting to watch him firsthand, he's going to continue to get those injuries just because the way that he runs. Like, he has a very violent running style, puts a lot of torque on his body with each step. So you're going to get those hamstrings, those calf strains, and those type of things. And at this age that he's at, you're going to continue to see that. And that's what we saw this year, even with them having him on the Kawhi Leonard load management style.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a safe bet that he's not going to age gracefully. That's truly a shame. He was one of the best receivers of this generation. So even in the games in which he was healthy last year, he didn't look the same. So, I mean, I wish him the best of luck. But Mr. Turron, I gotta ask you one more question before we wrap things up, before you plug yourself. Out of all this time, covering all these teams, doing what you've done in the game, in and out the game, do you have a favorite moment? Do you have a favorite player that you've interacted with, or do you have a favorite experience, any sort of year that particularly stands out?
Yeah, favorite moment. I mean, like I said, it had to be that just being in that locker room when Meek Mill's Dreams and Nightmares came on.
Ooh, getting turned.
After that Super Bowl win. It's that, and also when it came on, when they came out for the intros.
Yeah, I
remember like doing Radio Row that week, and every show that I did, I said the Eagles are going to win this game, and I gave different reasons. But then when they came out, I was like, darn right, they're winning this game, So that experience probably has been my favorite. Players, Steve Smith, when I was in Baltimore, he was Stephen Sr., he was fun. But I probably, Nelson Aguilar, I've gotten really close to him. He's probably been my favorite because not only was I able to cover him from a reporter standpoint, but I also was able to connect with him as a person, as a man, as he went through some of the things that he went through in Philly. We connected, and he's like a brother. So I would easily say Nelson Aguilar above everyone else that I've covered.
Man, and one of the biggest jobs, or I guess one of the biggest perks, I would call it, of being a reporter / journalist is, all these relationships, all these connections that you make. And so I think with you building that up with the Nelson Aguilar, I think that's definitely one of the perks of this job. But you know what they say, man. Time flies when you're having fun. That's 20 minutes right there. Mr. Turron Davenport, I respect and I appreciate you for all your time. I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of plug yourself, tell the fans out there, tell the people how they can find you, where they can find you, and what you got coming up.
Yeah, for sure. You could go to ESPN.com. You click on the NFL and then team pages. There's a Titans page. You'll find it there. You can search Google Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. I have a podcast called Talking with TD, and we interview a lot of draft prospects, and then during the year is previews of each Titans game, so you have that. And social media at @TDavenport_NFL on Twitter, and it's the same on Instagram. So definitely appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes, sir. Hey, it's our pleasure. And to the ladies and gentlemen out there, Mr. Turron Davenport, please give him a round of applause. Please follow him on Twitter, like he said, at the handles that he just mentioned. And that is it for us here on 32-Bit. Welcome to another edition, or that's it for another edition of On Beat, featuring the Tennessee Titans. Mr. Turron Davenport, it's been a pleasure. Hope you have a great day. Have a great night, y'all. Take care.